everybody I think that does this, they get a little bit emotional about it. They get excited about when they started and how that all built up. There's a bit more of a dark side to riding too. And I think that's the onus is on experienced riders to talk about the times that they choose not to ride, where they feel they shouldn't ride. And I mean, you take training, and you're coached on the physical part of the bikes. You know, if you've never ridden before, it's here's the clutch, here's the throttle, here's the gears, here's the brake, here's a little place to go and do some slow speed. You get all that. But there's not often much in the way of conversations about the mental aspect of riding a motorcycle and making sure you're in the right frame of mind to ride and that you're comfortable and confident in doing it. If you're not confident, it's scarier, it's more dangerous, right? But the other part of that is, I think, to have conversations about the times where, as an experienced rider, you've ridden and you look back on it and you think you shouldn't have ridden. So, you know, as an angry teenager, I'm so glad I didn't have a motorcycle, because I had sports cars. And it was always usually a combination of a girl or a bad hair day that would cause me to jump in a car and back out of the driveway with smoke coming from the rear tires, dump it into first, and there's smoke coming out again. And just that aggressiveness that I had as a young person, putting that on a motorcycle for me would have been, I feel, deadly. And then more currently, I'm more concerned with my state of mind in terms of my confidence. Talk about a sixth sense that says, hey, you feel for some reason like today is not a particularly good day to ride. Maybe you shouldn't, right? There's days where I've gotten all geared up and changed my mind. It's like there's something off about this. There's something wrong. I don't know what it is. Call it crazy. And then I just don't ride. And you know, there's all kinds of things that get in some people's way. Can be weather. Can be again, that whole idea that you need to do some kind of self-check. So for you, Neil, when do you choose not to ride? Are there times when you know you're not in a good state to be riding? And what kind of preparation are you going through as you're getting on your bike? I mean, it's one thing to do it at the beginning of the year to refamiliarize yourself with the bike. But let's say we're 2/3 of the way through the year and you have decided that you're going to go, ride to work on a Tuesday or whatever. What's going through your mind in terms of when you should and should not ride?
So I don't think I have the sixth sense that you might have been talking about. That I honestly can't think of a time where I went, yeah, I shouldn't ride today, because I am that keener. I'm not a fair weather rider. I ride rain, shine, and yes, I've played in the snow.
Yeah.
Depending on the style of bike I have. So for me, it's a gut feeling and knowing what my bike is doing, and we all have off days. So if I'm on a good day, if I'm on the Goldwing, I've done a little bit of a circle check, I push the bike out, I get myself all geared up, ready to go. As I'm going down the back alley, get my brain into gear. So I've actually seen that I've checked my air pressure gauges on my tires. If I'm not having a good day, I don't tend to notice that.
Right.
You come out onto the street. I live in a really, really quiet neighborhood. Have you actually done the look around? Yeah, if I'm not quite with it, I probably don't look quite as well. When I come to the first intersection that's of any major consequence, it's a four-way stop. And it's the scenario of, do I feel balanced that day? Was my shifting right coming up to there? Did I smoothly shift, click, 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 click through the gears? And the Goldwing would be a really good example. If yours, it basically clicks into the next gear. If I'm rough, if I'm not smooth, things aren't quite right. And I guess I've been riding 40 plus years, so that dawns on me. I realize that's what's happening. When I come to the first intersection and I come to a stop, am I off balance? Do I have to put both feet down, or do I just put one foot down? If I feel like I have to put both feet down and I feel like I'm stumbling a little bit, then I have to really focus and pay attention to go, okay, yeah, maybe I better be aware of what my body's doing. Again, I guess I'm talking about the whole scenario too, is if I'm sick, I've got a really bad cold or something.
Right.
I'm taking those out of the equation, or I've been drinking, because then, yes, the bike never goes anywhere.
Right.
So I'm taking those out. So I'm just talking about a normal day of riding. So I'm going to work first thing in the morning. And yeah, when I get to that first intersection, and depending on the style of bike I'm riding, I own an Africa Twin, and I have really good balance on it. And I think it's similar to a pedal bike where your weight is on your feet. I can balance at an intersection without actually putting my feet down.
Right.
And I notice if I can't do that on that bike, my balance is off a little bit that day for whatever reason. The Goldwing is a different situation because the weight is on your butt versus weight is on your feet, just because of the way I sit on the bike. So I can't balance as well on it. I'm pretty good at it, but I can't do it as well. So when I think about those kind of things, then it's the planning ahead, thinking ahead. Am I really focused on what's happening with me? And I think as a just general rule, as me being a little bit more of, because I was quite athletic, quite physically active all the time, I think I realize what my body's doing. Mm-hmm. Even though on a long day, I still get caught up in the I got to get home kind of stuff.
Right.
So, but yeah, those first few kilometers, I get a really good instinct of what I feel like that day. Weather-wise and everything else too. So
yeah, it's weird. Even when I refer to that sense of should I ride or not ride today, it's never weather dependent, right? It's a feeling that maybe I don't feel as though I'm going to be as attentive to all of those things that you're talking about as I should be. If my mind is on something else, right? And like we've all driven a vehicle and had several kilometers or miles passed and not, you almost wake up and it's like, well, where did the last 5 minutes go? Where did the last 20 minutes go? And I don't like that feeling on a motorcycle.
It's that thought when you go through an intersection and you're at the next set of lights and your brain goes back and you go, I hope that last light was green.
Absolutely. Yeah, really good example. And that's, again, so those, from a safety standpoint, if I'm not feeling as though I can be as attentive to all of the details that I need to be, I won't ride. And does that mean that I won't ride when it's pouring rain? Hell, I love riding in the rain. Riding in the rain is, if you've got good gear, every bit as wonderful as riding in dry weather. But I think from a gut check standpoint, recognizing the condition of your mind is no different than recognizing the condition of your body. We all talk about not wanting to ride at dusk and at dawn because of visibility, because of wildlife, those types of things. We talk about riding past our own personal limit because we're trying to get somewhere, or worse yet, riding with other people who have a different level of skill or a different tolerance for a type of riding or a duration of ride, mm-hmm. and trying to keep up with somebody. And I think the suggestion that I'm making is that the older that I get, the more sensitive I am to my own ability to ride that machine in traffic or otherwise. And just having a feeling in terms of, whether I'm in a good space or not. And like I said, when I was younger, I raced cars. The only the objective there was how fast can you put your foot to the floor. With dirt bikes, it was wide open almost all the time. That was, you've got a short straight between corners. The goal is to get from out of this corner and into this one as fast as possible. So you accelerate as hard as you can and brake to set up to get through that next berm. That's not what street bikes, it's not how this all works, right? I think from a mental health standpoint, knowing when you're in a good place and when you're not in a good place, there's a subconscious inclination that some people have towards recklessness because they're not in a good place.
Fortunately, I think I was mid to late 20s when I started riding. I lived 4,000 kilometers away from my folks, so I didn't have...
Right.
I abused a truck prior to that.
Yeah.
So I never had some of those things you did. I didn't, because they're just different space, different time.
Yeah.
And I think I've always been yes, I pushed myself. Yes, I pushed mountain bikes into places that I shouldn't have. Yes, I rally race cars as well. And I'd like to think I realize what's going on, but I also realize the mental break that it gives me. So we talk about mental health. So I'm going to swear. When COVID first hit.
Yeah. Wait, we went a few minutes without talking about that. That was really nice.
The nasty word. So when it first hit and the world locked down, there was this stigma that you shouldn't ride your motorcycle because if you got in an accident, you'd end up in the hospital, and all the hospital people were busy. But the other side of that coin, and I think a lot of people who do not ride don't understand the real mental piece for us, that the happiness it brings.
You are correct.
The stress release.
Absolutely.
And I think I first noticed it on my first bike. I think it was one of the first times that I ever went on a long ride. And it almost felt, the more miles I put on that day, the more relaxed I got, more relaxed. Now I'm not talking about, let me fall asleep relaxed. The stress you feel between your shoulders and your neck, those kind of things, I think most of us do feel. I'd forget about the day-to-day activities. Yeah, I would still think about them in my helmet, but that part of that puzzle would kind of go away for me, and I would really relax and get going. And not knowing when not to ride, for me, it's extreme temperatures.
Right.
When I first started riding, I lived out of town, and my theory was that it had to be above 0 in the morning and had to be above +10 going home, so at least I was warm going one direction.
Yeah.
Coming into Regina, and way back then it was Fleet Street was the first set of lights, and I can remember coming in at Fleet Street, pigeon-toed, because if you tuck your toes in behind the engine, you stayed relatively warm.
Yeah.
And I can remember not being able to take my feet out of there and move my fingers at the first set of lights. Fortunately, by the time I got to the lights, they changed. And by the time I got to the next intersection, I'd got my body moving again, that I was actually able to move my feet and my toes and my hands. So at that point, I stopped riding at those temperatures with layers, but nothing more than really layers. So now I cheat and I have all the heated gear and stuff.
Yeah.
So different, but I still don't. But understanding, having played in the winter on a motorbike on street tires and knobby tires and realizing what they're like, ice racing really appeals to me. But again, you're running studded tires on ice and throttle wide open. Good day, bad day, you definitely notice those kind of things. I notice it when you rally race. your times are really different because your head's not quite in the space. Now, rally racing in a car. But yeah, getting yourself, and I guess if you drive a car, you tend to put some of that in the back burner.
Right.
You don't think about it. I don't feel great today, but you know what? I still have to go to work. So you go. I've got 2 speeding tickets on my motorbike. The first one, I left basketball practice and I had the flu. I was just nasty sick. It took me a lot of convincing the police officer not to let me leave the door open because I thought I was going to be sick. I was that sick. The second one was, I'm from the Maritimes, and I'd moved out here, and I'd come in at midnight or something. Had gone to a friend's house, and I'd gone to work the next day, and the ride home, I got another speeding ticket. Again, I was absolutely dead tired. And again, I probably shouldn't have been riding.
Yeah.
Most situations, I think it dawns on me, but I was younger then. I didn't get it.
That, being out of sorts, whether it's physically not feeling well or pushing yourself to ride an extended day, are both scenarios where your brain is not, your mind is not on the game. And if you're in a car, in a truck, or whatever, you've got a cage around you. It's a little bit more room for error there.
And if you do make a mistake, there's airbags and things to protect you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Where we don't have that. It's what you visually see and you're aware of and what's happening.
If you're not on your game, you're not watching how other vehicle operators are behaving. You mentioned it, you stop looking at the horizon, if you will, and watching everything that's going on well off into the distance. You start fixating on that which is directly in front of you. And you know that, again, after years of doing this, when you catch yourself doing it, because you do, it's like you got to snap back into the rider mentality versus the driver mentality, and paying attention to all of your surroundings, right?
I've always made a joke about it. I'd like to take a camera in the vehicle and I'd like to point it at the other drivers around me, because inevitably people sit there staring straight ahead and they wait for the light to turn green. Mm-hmm. When I'm on a motorbike, I physically make the effort to turn my head to see what's happening on around me. So I see those kind of things. Now, not just arbitrarily flipping your head around for the heck, but actually paying attention to what's going on with traffic, seeing what's happening. Did the guy behind me stop? Oh, the light's starting to change. Okay, in Regina now, we got the lovely countdown of numbers. Is it going to turn yellow when it gets to 1 or not? Is that
they're not all the same, right?
They all seem to be marginally different. Yeah. So knowing those things, and it's paying those attention. So now you're really focused about that, not this. Watching people drive cars and being passenger with people driving cars. Do you see beyond the bumper in front of you? Yeah. Do you actually look around or over or through or whatever past that car to see traffic? If you are, then you can anticipate what's happening. Change lanes, slow down sooner, whatever you have to do, and you see it. Having been in that situation where I didn't feel good, I realized really quickly that I was looking at the motorcycle tires in front of me, not focused out there. So now I'm being reactive. Is that the right word? Reactive. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rather than proactive, seeing it and slowing down soon, I'm now dealing with what's happening already in front of me. And then I found I was braking really hard. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, I don't find I do that very often. Actually, in all my years of riding, I can only actually remember a couple instances where I had to actually do an emergency brake in the city of Regina. That both of them were what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, there's...
you can't see everything.
Right.
One was a dog that came out between 2 parked cars. Could I see it over there? If it was over there, I never saw it, but all of a sudden it was in front of my tire. Another one was a fellow who came out of a parking lot with parked cars, and he came out in between all the cars. Again, I never saw him until he actually came across the sidewalk in front and was cutting across the road.
I tend to have at least a couple of closer calls every spring because motorists aren't used to seeing bikes. And when I'm getting on my bike all the time, but with even more emphasis in the spring because I haven't been riding for a while, I'm making sure that I know as much about exactly kind of where the horn is as everything else in terms of controlling that bike, because the number of times that I'm on both binders and the horn at the same time to try and get somebody's attention because they've looked right through me, it's kind of disconcerting. And like I said, it happens more in the spring, I feel, because we're a little bit less visible. People aren't used to looking for us, right?
I always remember my son, one of my boys rides, and I always remember him buying he bought a Harley, I can think of the name. Let's go straight line bike anyway.
Yeah.
A V-Rod. He
Right.
bought himself a V-Rod, and he bought it in the winter, spent all this money. Spring's coming. And like every one of us, we're itching to get out there. We're dying to get on the road. He had actually got his learners and everything else using one of my smaller bikes in the garage. And I threw him the keys and said, here, ride the little bike for a couple of weeks, get yourself ready, get people ready to know that you're out there, and get yourself riding, get yourself prepared. I can't remember if he actually dropped the bike. I think he actually did drop the bike. But one of his comments was, boy, the roads are dirty. Yeah, because when you're in your car, you don't see what's under your feet.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter that much. Let's face it. 4 wide tires planted on a little bit of gravel on the street doesn't hurt you. That skiff of road salt, leftover crap that they put on the roads in the wintertime, that between the pavement and your 2 skinny motorcycle tires is a bit of a game changer.
Well, it could be as simple as you've stopped at an intersection, you've put your foot down on the berm in the middle of the road, and it's greasy, and now your foot's down.
Yeah.
And now your bike's on top of you. It could be that simple. But yeah, we don't, even though I'm a motorcyclist, I don't see all that in the car. It's not until it's under my feet that I actually am fully aware of what's going on. So again, it's that springtime thing. Yeah, we're excited to get out there. Are you physically and mentally ready to get out there? And the first highway trip is exhausting.
That's an interesting topic in itself because any amount of distance requires conditioning, and it requires a little bit of annual conditioning. But I think that it also requires, if you aspire to do long trips and long days, you have to cut yourself some slack as a new rider and work your way into that. Because I've known plenty of people who got into riding, wanted to do long distance rides, decided to go on a long distance ride with somebody who has a lot of experience riding. And those first couple of trips, because they're trying to keep up with somebody who's got a different capacity for or tolerance or amount of, I don't know, somebody's more, you can't use the term durable, but I guess ultimately somebody who's more seasoned. And people will do that and then they'll be frustrated. They'll be like, I don't know how you possibly can do that, how you can just ride day after day after day. And I don't think everybody just can do it. You have to learn to do it. That distance riding when I first got back into bikes was hard for me. And then I learned to enjoy it, getting from point A to point B. And that point B was a destination where there was a bunch of other fun riding to do, right? Turn around and ride back afterwards. That idea that when we outride our own ability to pay attention outride our own physical ability to be in a place where we're controlling the bike, etc., is not very comfortable. And it's funny, I went through phases as a rider. First, I really liked the long distance ride once I built up the capacity to do it. Then I started hauling my bikes from point A to point B so I could get there in short order and ride when I got there and then drive back. But I did a few of those trips and I found that I really missed the time inside my helmet, the time inside my own head. For a while there, I'd swear off the idea of the 6 hours without a turn, right? Like, let's be honest, if you're riding from Regina to Winnipeg or Regina to Calgary, your GPS is saying, turn left in 8 hours.
Yep.
So that can be really monotonous for a person. But there's a point, I think, and I found that point where I want that monotony. I want that time inside my helmet. As long as I'm not so tired that I'm falling asleep, I miss it if I don't do it.
So when COVID hit, it was that case of, well, maybe I shouldn't ride my bike. But the other side of that coin is I need to ride my bike because you need that alone time.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter whether I'm going to use the word depressed. It doesn't matter if you're not in the greatest of spirits. If you're physically able to get on your bike and go for a ride, you feel better about it because you get the air and things moving around you, and it feels good to be at one with your machine. It gives you that relief, whatever you might need to forget, even though you'll think about it.
Yeah.
It feels different.
People who don't ride don't get that. They don't understand how that is a release. And so from an athlete standpoint, when you're in your zone at peak performance, the rest of the world kind of just goes away. And you're not even focusing on anything. You're just doing what it is that you do. And everything is falling into place almost naturally. On a motorcycle, it's a very similar sensation, but you can be in that zone for hours, where as much as the rest of the world disappears, I think it disappears because riding a motorcycle requires a different level of focus. And so that level of focus allows you to forget your problems. It allows you to forget your work.
I wouldn't say forget. It lets you see it from a different perspective.
Okay.
Almost like you're seeing it from a more relaxed view, looking down onto it,
I can't think of a better thing to do when it's been 40 below week after week after week. And when it's not 40 below, you've got an 80 kilometer per hour wind. Can't think of a better thing to do than sit amongst a bunch of bikes and yap about bikes.